The Detroit Regional Chamber's 2017 Mackinac Policy Conference is underway, and we have it all covered for you. You'll hear from Detroit's new school superintendent and Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan on the city's comeback, plus the push to change Lansing and politics surrounding the governor's race. My Week at Mackinac starts right now.
Support for My Week at the Mackinac Policy Conference is brought to you by Masco Corporation Foundation, DTE Energy Foundation, ITC Holdings Corporation, PVS Chemicals, and by...
Did you know Gordon Food Service was started by a 23-year-old entrepreneur as a butter and egg delivery business more than a century ago? In 1948, school teacher Gerard Wendell Hayworth borrowed $10,000 from his parents to start a woodworking operation in his family's garage. It's now Hayworth Incorporated. These are just some of the ways Michigan's pioneers started out as small companies with big ideas.
We are business leaders for Michigan. We are committed to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929. Funding for this program is provided by Delta Airlines. Keep climbing.
Hi there, and welcome to a special My Week coming to you from Mackinac Island. We are in the parlor of the Grand Hotel, where 1,600 business, government, and community leaders are meeting to talk about the future of the state. And right now, we seem to be having a good time. We have a big show for you coming up. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the big state issues and what leaders hope to accomplish. Plus, the new superintendent of the Detroit Public Schools Community District talks with me about his plans for improving education. Also coming up, Mayor Mike Duggan talks about the city's revitalization and what still remains to be done, and a special under-the-radar report on the transportation of the future. But we start tonight with a closer look at the topics that are dominating the conversations in state and local governments, as well as right here on the island. Take a look. It's a pivotal time in Michigan, a state on slowly improving economic footing, but facing big decisions about education, infrastructure, jobs, and the next big industries. With bankruptcy in the far rear view, Detroit has momentum with steady growth in Midtown and downtown, from the new arena project, housing, to expansion plans at Eastern Market and the riverfront. Streetlights are on, residents are starting to count on city services, and now a concentration on neighborhoods, pocket revitalization that can encourage density and development in more areas.
Connect residents to jobs and to each other in a way that they have never seen before.
But the challenges of unemployment, job opportunity, stable education, and crime remain a priority. Mayor Mike Duggan is facing re-election and trying to work on lowering insurance rates, as well as getting Detroiters trained for job openings.
11,000 more Detroiters are working today than are working a year ago.
For Detroit Public Schools, a bailout from the legislature last summer meant a new name, no debt, and an elected school board for the first time in years. A new superintendent starts in just weeks, as parents and teachers wait to see what improvements will be there and what support they can expect.
The teacher and the parent has to work together. The students have to see that they're on the same page. You know, if I, as a teacher, have certain expectations, the parent also has to have those same expectations.
How do you engage those parents, though, who maybe
through conversation.
I think there has to be different strategies. I think we have to be more creative and open, starting with the premise that parents do care about their children.
Statewide, improving K-12 education is a concern. The state is working with low-achieving schools to come up with plans so they won't have to shut down. According to Education Trust Midwest, Michigan ranks 41st in the country in fourth grade reading levels, with similar stats in math. Big decisions on governance and funding are at play. As for Michigan's economic outlook, personal incomes are on the rise. The state is more attractive to entrepreneurs. And while there is progress in attracting business to the state, there is more work to be done.
We've made a lot of progress growing jobs. I wish we were making more progress growing incomes. Population is steady, it was going down, And if you look at some of the leading indicators, I mean, we've got great innovation going on in our state, which is driving exports and patents and things like that. But the talent pipeline is not improving nearly as fast as it needs to. And of course, the infrastructure needs a lot of work.
And fixing roads, water, sewer, and energy will take money and a coordinated plan. People in Flint still aren't drinking water from their tap years after the water supply switch triggered a lead contamination crisis with devastating consequences. The continuing cleanup of Flint plays a part in the dwindling trust Michiganders seem to have in government to get things done. As always, politics drives part of the conversation across the state. Michigan went for President Trump in November, and the Republican-controlled Congress could have a major impact here with decisions on health care and immigration. And keep your eyes on 2018, too, and for who wants to be the next governor of Michigan. Yeah, and people are already talking politics here. There's a lot to get to, so let's bring in our My Week contributors. Nolan Finley of the Detroit News, Stephen Henderson of the Detroit Free Press. Hey guys, we always pick the right time to do this show, right when the music is playing and people are having a lot of fun, and we really can't hear a lot of stuff.
And plus, all the little sausages will be gone by the time we get
out of here. All right, so let's get down to the good work here. I'm going to ask both of you, give me a quick assessment of where you think we are as a state right now. Some of the challenges still remaining. We've been here now. This is the 7th year Detroit Public Television has come up and done this, and we've seen some highs and lows. Nolan, kind of give me your assessment of where things stand.
We're doing a heck of a lot better than we were a few years ago. I think we're still making good progress. There's some challenges out there. I think the foundation is much stronger. We've got some problems with our workforce. We need to upgrade our workforce to attract
talent. That's it.
Well, no, to attract jobs and job creators. They're looking for skilled workers. We don't have enough of them. There's a bit of a inertia now. I think the conflicts between the governor and the legislature has slowed things down. That's not good. That needs to break through. But I think overall, Michigan is still in a positive outlook.
But we still have a lot of challenges that we really need to take a look at, education being one of them.
Yeah, well, and one of the things they're talking a lot about here at the conference is inclusion. Who is benefiting from the recovery that we're seeing around the state? And it's not everybody. It's not everybody geographically, it's not everybody up and down the economic ladder, and it is not everybody racially. We've heard a lot of very moving talks and speeches and panels today about those lingering problems, about people who are getting left behind and will not be able to find their way to a better space.
Another thing that people are talking about up here is sort of a little bit of posturing for the 2018 governor's race. Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley was set to make, he made a big announcement yesterday that everyone thought that he was going to be announcing he was going to be running, but instead he is advocating for a part-time legislature. Do you think that's going to fly, Nolan?
I mean, he's going to have to get the financial backing to get it on the ballot, or the legislature will have to give a 2/3 vote. I don't think this legislature can get a 2/3 vote on anything. So it'll be a very expensive ballot proposal, and I think a lot of funders will be looking at it and saying, man, unless you do something about term limits, a part-time legislature may make things worse.
So you want that to go hand in hand. Those two things would have to go together.
I like the idea of a part-time legislature. I think it needs to be twinned with some term limit relief. Got to stretch them out a little longer. We have to have more expertise in Lansing and a more mature and responsible legislature.
Do you get that kind of expertise and a more mature legislator when you have a part-time legislature?
It depends. I mean, I think some states prove you can. Other states prove that it's very difficult. It's also not what everybody thinks in terms of these part-time legislatures. I lived in Kentucky, I lived in Maryland. They spent far more time in special sessions that either the governor has to call because something comes up or because they don't finish their business in this 90-day or whatever window. It's not the magic bullet that everyone thinks it is, and it doesn't really make that much difference. If you cut their pay, you save a little bit of money. How much does the legislature actually cost us? I mean, you're not talking about real money that you could use for something else. It's really a punitive measure trying to say, well, the government's in the way. Well, I don't know. Government is in the way. I'm not sure the reason that they're in the way is because they're around all the time.
It's interesting, though, because if you poll people around Michigan, the Center for Michigan did a year-long study taking a look at what kind of trust people have in government to actually get things done. It's going to be very interesting if they do put this on the ballot, what the reaction would be.
Well, they spend a lot of time up there now doing meddlesome things, pet peeve legislation, ideologically driven legislation. You shorten their time, focus them on their mission, passing a budget.
It would get rid of that. You're right. It would get rid of that the silly stuff.
And so they already, I mean, look at how much time they're in recess. They work 3 days a week in Lansing. They're more or less part-time now. So, yeah, I think it would be an improvement as long as you allow them to stay long enough to develop some skills.
All right, well, we'll have to see where that one goes. You know, the new superintendent of Detroit Public Schools Community District made his public debut here on the island. I had a chance to talk with Dr. Nikolai Vitti about his short-term and his long-term plans to improve education. Take a look.
I think what our focus is when we're talking about parents is, one, making sure that their children are safe in our schools. We can't even talk about education if children aren't safe. So we have to make sure that we continue to do that well and consistently. And then secondly, obviously improving the educational quality of what they're receiving as far as children are concerned. So our main focus is on the 46,000 students that are currently in our school system. There's certainly going to be talk about recruiting parents back to our school system, but we have to focus on the 46,000 that are there now and improve the educational experience for those children. I think when we do that, parents will hear that, they'll talk to other parents, and we'll be able to return parents that have left the system to come back. And then we're going to develop new programming, especially for 18-19, that is dynamic and unique for Detroit. And I think that's going to be an opportunity to bring parents back that aren't even thinking about Detroit Public Schools right now.
So when you're talking about those 46,000 children and their experience in the classroom, you're talking about buildings and the conditions of those, but you're also talking about teachers feeling supported, or even having enough teachers to get in those classrooms.
Well, that's right, and that's why one of the first short-term goals is to be fully staffed or near fully staffed by the fall. We can't really talk about offering an excellent educational experience if we don't have a full-time teacher in the classroom. So right now we have 100 pure vacancies, 160 extra vacancies if you include long-term subs. We have to rectify that situation by the fall and function with a sense of urgency around that. I think the first step in that direction is finalizing the current contract negotiations that we have with our teachers. It will provide a small bump for all teachers, but it's not the salary that I think our teachers deserve, but that will happen in the long term, but at least it's a demonstrative strategy to increase salaries for existing teachers and new teachers that are possibly going to come into our school system. And then, as you mentioned, we got to change culture. So the reality is our district has been functioning in a state of chaos, in a state of crisis for some time. And it's been an approach to survive, not really the ideal scenario when you're talking about culture of an organization. At the end of the day, people don't want to work in an organization that's constantly changing, evolving, new leaders, new governance structures.
All right, so let's talk Detroit education, and joining us now at the desk is Erin Einhorn. She's the editor of Chalkbeat Detroit. Welcome, Erin. It's good to see you.
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right, you moderated a session that Dr. Vitti was speaking in today. Why don't you go ahead and give us what your overall impression is of his plans, his short-term and long-term plans so far, and how you think he handled this entire situation up here today on Mackinac.
I thought he hit all the right notes. I think a lot of people came in there looking to hear certain things, and I think at least the reaction I heard from a lot of people is, he had a lot of applause lines. A lot of people felt like he was saying the right things. He made a special point of giving a shout out to Alicia Merriweather, the interim superintendent, to thank her for her service, to honor that. I think a lot of the people who had wanted her to be superintendent were glad to hear that. He had a lot of bold words about, his vision and the promise and what he's hoping to accomplish. Obviously, what he actually does, the inside game is where the real test is going to be. But I think, the outside test, what he's saying to the world, I at least heard a lot of pretty positive feedback.
Yeah, and he did say to me, he said, I want to be as accessible as possible. And so I want to be able to get out and to talk to as many people. He talks about giving teachers a bump in pay. Stephen, how far does that go in terms of building a little bit of morale when he's talking about, look, this is what we're going to try to do. Obviously, they're not getting paid enough as he sees, but a small bump at least.
I think anything you can give teachers to make them feel appreciated matters, right? But you still are talking about teachers who start off work in the mid-30s in a district where the needs are unbelievably profound, where you don't have the kind of supplies and resources that you would if you were teaching in another district. We have to start thinking about ways to make that dramatically different. You have to incentivize more so teaching in Detroit schools than other schools, and we're not a state that's even having that conversation right now.
Nolan, let me go ahead and ask you this. What do you think he had to achieve today by coming up and speaking to this crowd? Why do you think it was important for him to be up here instead of down in the district right now?
This is a business community that has been tapped over and over and over to support Detroit schools, most recently with the EAA. Some of these folks up here wrote really big checks to the EAA, and they might as well have sent them to the paper shredder for what good it did. I think he needs the freedom from the governor and the legislature to make Detroit sort of the center for innovation in urban education. The current model of education doesn't work. It's broken, and it's particularly broken in urban areas. So let's let this guy experiment, innovate, try new things, free him from these tests, this rabid testing we do, and let him focus on teaching these kids to learn and preparing them to succeed in life, and not worry so much about what they do on the third grade MEP test or my test.
Yeah, but there has to be some kind of measurement of what these kids are learning.
Doesn't necessarily mean the measurement we're using now. Give me a fill-in-the-blank test or a fill-in-the-circle test.
Well, that also is maybe a larger conversation for how we're approaching testing at the entire state level. Aaron, let me ask you this. How does Nikolai Vitti balance the need that he needs to in terms of doing things fast enough where people see some kind of change, where they feel at least, you know what, parents making the decision to keep their kids in Detroit public schools come fall, but with the long-term goal of, God, he's probably got one of the toughest jobs in the state of Michigan right now.
Well, I think one of the interesting things he said this morning is that the big changes are going to come in the 2018-2019 school year, meaning they're a year and change off. And this year, he's going to be putting his team together. He's going to be assessing the situation and, you know, maybe trying to fix some small problems. But the real fundamental big changes that he plans to make, they're a year in the future, and then it's going to take a year or two for those changes to bear fruit. And so now we're talking about 2, 3, 4 years from now, longer, before we're going to see any, you know, quantifiable results. And the question is, all the goodwill he's getting up here this week and all the kind of, you know, support he's getting from the community, the business community, all the communities, you know, how long is that going to last? And when test scores come out next year, if they're not substantially different than last year, people are going to say, oh, well, you know, that was a disappointment. Oh, too bad. Maybe let's make some changes again.
Oh, well, but you know what? Don't you think that people have to dig in and realize that we're going to have to at least stick with something for a while and to see what ends up happening. All right, Aaron Einhorn from Chalk Beat Detroit, thanks so much for joining us. It's always good to see you, and especially up here at Mackinac this year.
Thanks so much.
All right, you know, Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan took to the stage late Wednesday to talk about revitalization of the city. He focused on the city's booming business environment, reducing crime, and really focusing on the needs of the neighborhoods.
Blight removal is critical, but we have to save every house we can. We got a lot of beautiful houses that we lost in the mortgage crisis in 2008 and 2009. And so I've shown you some of these pictures before. You know what we're doing, right? We sue the owners who abandon their houses. We get an agreement from them to fix them up. Or we take title and sell the houses on the internet. And we only demolish those that can't be saved. And now we're adding another piece, which is we're going to board up every house we're not going to be able to get to in the next year or two to secure all of them.
All right, I thought that was pretty interesting when Mayor Duggan said today, it's starting in August, they're going to start boarding. Are you even paying attention to me right now, or are you laughing?
I said something silly, and he's laughing at me.
I'm glad you're all paying attention. All right, well, when the mayor said that they're going to start boarding up houses, I mean, obviously, if they're not on the immediate demo list, they're going to start doing 100 to 200 houses a week.
Gives the city, I think, a better feel, a feel that somebody's paying attention, that it's not neglected. I mean, it's not the same as putting the house back in service, but at least it's not sitting there with its windows gaping open, the doors off, people moving in and out. It gives a feeling that somebody cares, somebody notices, and give us a little time, and we'll fix this house up.
As always, his speeches up here at Mackinac, Stephen, I mean, he's got a standing room only crowd in there. People feel, it seems like they're hungry for whatever news that he's going to bring them up here.
I think they are. You know, he's an exciting speaker, and if you compare him to past Detroit mayors, you know, he always has something new to talk about, right? Here I'm going to do this now, and here's what I got done. I think the problem is still for him that most people in the city, if you ask them how different their lives are today than they were 4 years ago, it's really hard for them to look at concrete changes. And I'm not blaming him for that. I don't think anybody could have made those changes in 4 years. But this year, he will be asked to answer for that. And I think the presentation today was the best case he can put on for the things that he's done and that he wants to do. The question is, would it be enough if he faced real opposition, for instance, in the mayoral race?
I mean, I think what you saw from him today, it was a huge concentration on neighborhoods and talking so much about inclusion and about how this is for everyone and no one should be put out by other people trying to move in. And I think that's a larger message that he's really starting to push.
I mean, that's where the battle's going to be fought in this election. And, you know, the idea in Detroit, we talk a little bit, a lot maybe, about gentrification. Most of these redevelopment projects are going in land that was abandoned and empty. Very few people are being displaced, and so I think that's a false issue, but I mean, people feel it's happening. He's got to address it. I mean, folks in Detroit want a miracle, and they deserve a miracle. They've been down an awfully long time, and the reality is this is going to be a very slow climb back. And you know, I think Mike Duggan has to talk about the steps he's taken to get us on that path.
And talking a little bit also about jobs and employment and you know, job training and making sure that people realize what jobs are available or realize what kind of training they can get to get those jobs too.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the key. There are jobs that are available that Detroiters are not trained for, are not being qualified for, and they're not being prepared for them, right? We're not working hard enough to make sure that they're available. Not to mention that, how do they get to those jobs from these isolated
Transportation, again, a huge issue, and also education. So he's going to be talking about that as well. All right, stay here. You know, as usual, the guys from Under the Radar Michigan are here on the island with us. And today they got up to speed on the future of mobility and the vehicles of tomorrow. Take a look.
Now, if you take the University of Michigan and Michigan State and put them together on a field, things can get pretty brutal. But if you put them together in the field of autonomous vehicles, things get pretty productive pretty quick.
And here at Shepler's Ferry Dock in Mackinac City, we had a chance to see how they're doing it. Both these great universities had autonomous vehicles on display, giving us all a look at our not-too-distant future. It's all part of Planet M's new efforts to show the world how Michigan is driving these new technologies. Steve Arwood from MEDC and Kirk Steidel from MDOT are two guys who have Michigan's mobility on their minds.
So Steve, how did you finally get Michigan and Michigan State together in such a nice setting like this?
Well,
and peaceful.
Yeah. Well, what you have behind is two of our major universities' product. It's two Lincoln cars that are fully autonomous. You could drive them out and take them on the road today.
And meet some of the young engineers that are actually responsible for some of these systems, which is great.
Yep.
And I have to say, I mean, this year, a big part of the conference is mobility, connectivity, autonomy, and that's affecting the world overall right now.
Exactly. When you think about what mobility means for Michigan, I mean, you know, it's our legacy, the auto industry, obviously, and our future. That's one part of it. But when you think about all the different ways mobility is going to change, civil engineering for our roads, insurance, legal, all the opportunities people are going to have that might not have mobility, that could have new mobility in the age of autonomy. It's very, very exciting.
Yeah, and as far as the MDOT goes and the roads go, it's changing the way we're even thinking about the future.
Yeah, it really is. You know, this is really about how people and goods move around, not just Michigan, but around the country and around the globe. This technology that's being developed right here in Michigan, really the center of it all, is really going to morph into the entire world and the way that society interacts with the machine and with the movement of goods and products.
Well, what you're doing is great. And even though My car is driven with organic intelligence on the way up here. I did use your roads, and they were very nice.
That's good.
Thanks, Tom. Let me see now. If I can set this thing to go home, then I can just.
You gotta love it.